Video games has been a medium that people have enjoyed for decades, and it is a medium that is ever evolving, and every so often, a game comes around that changes everything. Games like Super Mario, Doom, Legend of Zelda, and Skyrim, and many, many more. All of these games have had profound impacts on gaming as a whole, though perhaps few have had as much impact as Valve's debut title, Half-Life. Before we can understand just how important Half-Life is, we need to go back and look at what gaming was like before 1998 when Half-Life was first released. Needless to say, gaming looked extremely different than what it does today. The 90s was a time of tremendous change as the hobby was really switching from one that was primarily enjoyed in arcades to mostly being enjoyed at home, with the rise of personal computers and consoles. Games like Doom, Super Mario 64, Final Fantasy VII, and of course, Half-Life were created not to be utilized at arcades, but at home. In the midst of all this change, there was one genre that was uniquely equipped to excel: shooters. In 1992, id Software released the much-loved Wolfenstein 3D, and while there were other games before it that had shooting mechanics, it is widely regarded as the first true first-person shooter. In Wolfenstein, you play as B.J. Blazkowicz during World War II as he fights through Axis-controlled territory. This game was extremely popular and really solidified shooters as a true genre. Following up on the success that was Wolfenstein, just a year later, id Software released another landmark title, Doom. In it, you play as the titular Doom guy as he fights through the Mars complex that has been invaded by demons. Doom was so good and so successful that just about every other FPS released after it for years tried to replicate its success. id Software really was the pioneer of shooters in the early and mid 90s, and they again struck gold with a new title released in 1996, the first Quake, and Quake 2, which was released just a year later in 1997. Both of these games pushed the FPS genre forward with extremely fast movement, sharp gunplay, and in particular, pushed shooters into a more competitive environment, which we see bear fruit in games like CS2 and Valorant today. This brings us to 1998. Now, up until this point, shooters did not really have a narrative. These games were much more focused on gameplay, with a narrative being more of a background element, mostly relying on environmental clues to cue in players on what is really happening in the world. All of that was due to change by an upstart studio called Valve. Valve bursted onto the scene with its debut title, Half-Life. The game was an FPS, but it was very different from the shooters of its time. The game had a narrative story. It took its time getting into the action. It allowed players to get immersed in this world that they were introducing to its new players. It allowed you to interact with the world, unlike any game before it. It might seem trivial now, but the fact that you could interact with a soda machine or press the security button and the world would react to those actions was truly groundbreaking for 1998. And what's more, it made it feel like you were in that world. The fact that NPCs would react to your actions truly made it feel like your actions actually had consequences in the world that you were in. It's the little things like that that make Half-Life stand out in a time when every other game was really just trying to be the next Doom. Needless to say, Valve's hard work paid off, and by 2008, the game had sold over 7 million copies and won over 50 Game Awards. And the game today still very much has legs, with very popular mods like Black Mesa updating it for a modern audience. Just a warning, from here on out we will be discussing spoilers, so if you have not played Half-Life, please go ahead and try it. But the game is from 1998, so from here on we will be discussing the spoilers in the story. In Half-Life, you play as Dr. Gordon Freeman, who works at the Black Mesa Research Facility. One day, as Gordon is arriving late to work, an experiment that he is involved in goes horribly wrong, resulting in what's called a resonance cascade. The result of this is aliens are now pouring into the facility. Those that aren't killed are being turned into horrible monsters by these creatures that attach themselves to their victims' heads. The Black Mesa facility, once Freeman's workplace, has now become a place of nightmares. In Freeman's struggle to survive, he is told by one of the staff that he must fight his way to the surface and contact the government. As Freeman progresses, he is attacked by a multitude of aliens that seem to appear out of thin air. As time goes on, Freeman gets closer and closer to the surface, where he finally makes contact with the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit, or HECU. However, they are not here to rescue the survivors. They are here to kill anyone that is left of the Black Mesa staff and contain the alien threat. Freeman is forced to fight through both alien and military personnel alike as he attempts to escape and reverse the effects of the resonance cascade. As Freeman continues, the HECU devotes more and more resources to stopping Freeman at any cost. Freeman, at this time, is told that a significant number of scientists have held up at the Lambda complex, a top-secret wing of an already top-secret facility. They tell Freeman that he must launch a rocket the military had prepared and subsequently abandoned. Freeman succeeds in launching the rocket. Unfortunately, however, it is not enough, and they are not able to stop the onslaught of alien forces. At this point, Freeman decides to make his way to the Lambda complex and work with the scientists there to put a stop to this once and for all. Freeman again must fight his way through alien and HECU forces, who are now preparing to retreat and bombard the site in an attempt to stop the invasion. Freeman learns at the entrance to the Lambda complex that the scientists there had secretly developed transportation technology which they were using to travel to the world of Zen, which is where the aliens were coming from. Once in the complex, Freeman is told that there is a large portal in Zen which is allowing the aliens to come into our world, and that it is tied to a single extremely powerful entity. Any attempt to end this will have to result in the death of this entity. Freeman must travel into Zen and confront whatever this entity is. Gordon uses the transportation technology upon where he is transported to a world totally unlike ours. Here he fights many of the aliens he has already seen, as well as something known as the Gonarch, who is the most powerful minion of Nihilanth, who he learns is the leader of the alien forces. Now, the leader of the aliens, Nihilanth, had been speaking to Freeman ever since he set foot on Zen, saying things like, "You will all die," and "I am the only one left," despite the words of Nihilanth and the resistance of alien forces, which include the Vortigaunts, who seem to be under the control of Nihilanth and are not actually hostile naturally. Freeman is able to make his way to Nihilanth, and after an extremely difficult fight, Freeman is finally able to defeat Nihilanth. As the leader of the alien forces dies, it floats to the ceiling and explodes, knocking Freeman unconscious. Once he awakes, it seems he has won, when he is approached by a curious man who congratulates him on a job well done. The man had taken all of Freeman's weapons while he was unconscious and offers Freeman a choice. He can take a job from him and his unknown employers, or this mysterious man can offer Freeman a fight, which he describes as he has no chance of winning. Freeman accepts, and that is where Half-Life 1 ends. I love Half-Life. Even to this day, you can really see just how impressive this game really was. The fact that a game from 1998 allows you to interact with as much as it does is truly groundbreaking. A lot of games from today don't even let you interact with the environment as much as Half-Life did. And I am actually a pretty recent convert to Half-Life 1. I had of course played Half-Life 2, and I had played the Black Mesa remake of Half-Life, but I had never actually gotten around to playing the original Half-Life experience. And it wasn't until I started researching and preparing for this video that I realized I really wanted the original experience of Half-Life. And I gotta say, I was not disappointed. I was really blown away at how polished everything was, especially for a game from 1998, 28 years ago. I thought the visuals were really good. And while the graphics, of course, are very dated, I thought the visuals were definitely original enough to where it still made looking around at the world really interesting. The world of Zen, I think, was the most surprising for me when it came to a visual aspect, because in the Black Mesa remake, the world is very beautiful. It looks incredible, the colors are vibrant, and I honestly wasn't looking forward to it that much in the OG version because I just didn't know how the visuals would land. And honestly, I thought it looked really good. I thought, of course, it doesn't look as good as Black Mesa, but I thought it was very interesting to look at, and it definitely provided enough of a visual contrast to the Black Mesa facility that it really allowed Zen to stand out in a really cool way. The movement is incredible. Valve just really nails the movement, especially in their older titles. There's nothing like zooming down one of those hallways in the Black Mesa facility, bunny hopping around, and then blasting enemies with the various weapons that you accrue throughout the game. The soundtrack is super good and of course iconic. However, the soundtrack is oddly quiet compared to the rest of the game, so a lot of times it is actually pretty hard to hear it. And there were also times where there just was no soundtrack, where it really felt like it needed it, particularly in different boss fights, where it was just oddly quiet, and I think the game would have benefited a lot from a soundtrack being included there. And the gunplay felt great. It felt really responsive, especially for a game from 1998. Now, all of the glazing aside, is the game perfect? No. The game is almost 30 years old, and there are definitely some rough spots. For one, the audio is really rough. I found throughout my playthrough that the audio would just pretty consistently spike, and it just made the listening experience very unenjoyable. But of course, that is to be expected from a game that is almost 30 years old. The voice acting was pretty hit or miss for me. There's a pretty limited number of voice actors, so you'll probably only really be hearing 3 or 4 different voices for the most part, and the writing was pretty cheesy at times, though I found the voice acting and the writing really charming. It just has this old school feel that I just can't resist, and honestly, it led to a lot of pretty funny moments for me.
I killed 12 dumbass scientists and not one of them fought back. This sucks.
The NPCs could be pretty wonky, especially when it came to following you around and listening to you. You would request them to follow and you would go about your business, and then all of a sudden you turn around and they're gone. You don't even know where they stopped following you, so you have to backtrack, find them again, and that was just kind of a pain. And the NPCs in general could just be pretty clunky. Again, the game is old, and it did lead to some funny moments as well.
Hello.
Coming back to the Zen portion of the game, that was definitely the part of the game I was not looking forward to the most. And I know it was definitely a point of criticism for the original, and even for the Black Mesa remake as well. In the Black Mesa remake, you spend a ton of time in Zen, and it honestly gets really exhausting, and I really just was not looking forward to that in the original. However, I was pleasantly surprised that it is far shorter in the original. In the remake, you spend a ton of time getting chased around by Gonark, the most powerful minion of the leader of the aliens, and you are just chased by him until you can finally fight him and defeat him. However, in the original, that is not the case. Pretty much the second you get dropped in Zen, you're fighting Gonark and you defeat him. Then you have a pretty brief traversal section where you're going through this factory with different Vortigons around, and then you fight the big boss. And that's the Zen portion. I really don't understand why Black Mesa drew it out so much. I just remember thinking in the remake, just, oh my god, another section that I have to traverse through and these weird plants I gotta open up. That was not the case in the original. Now, the criticism I do have for Zen is the boss fights were really underwhelming. They were honestly pretty easy, and there wasn't a lot of complexity to them. And the difficulty part was really the sticking point for me, because the entirety of Half-Life 1 was pretty challenging, honestly. You spend most of the game getting absolutely lasered by enemies, especially the HECU. Seriously, the military are probably the hardest enemies in this game, and there was always something hiding around a corner just to take a little bit of your health. And I found myself at many times in this game having very little health, stressed out of my mind because if I get hit one time, I'm gonna die. However, when you get to Zen, it's like the game got switched to easy mode, and that just made the boss fights really boring, because they were already not very complex, but now they were also just super easy. Despite my complaints about the boss fights, I thought the ending was super interesting. It's really cool to see the appearance of such an interesting character like the G-Man, who you see throughout the game walking around and looking at you, and I would love to learn more about his character if Valve ever got around to making another Half-Life title. So yeah, I really enjoyed playing through Half-Life and talking about it, and if you are a fan of story-driven shooters like I am, a lot of that is due to Half-Life. If you haven't ever played Half-Life, like was the case with me just until very recently, I highly suggest it. And if a game from 1998 sounds a little too old for you and you just don't want to deal with some of the clunkiness, then I would definitely suggest Black Mesa. It provides a lot of quality of life improvements and just makes the overall experience a lot more smooth, but it keeps the core of the game intact. Regardless of its clunkiness though, I think the OG Half-Life is absolutely a masterpiece and deserves to be considered so, and its impact truly cannot be understated. Anyway, I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more from me, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you like this longer form kind of video, just let me know. I really had a blast researching it, and I would love to do more things like this in the future. I appreciate you guys. Just you watching means a ton to me, and I'll catch you on the next video. Watch me on YouTube when I'm live or on Twitch. Appreciate that as well. Have a good one. Later.